Dear Ashton, I know the secrets your role model keeps for you. Role model being Danny Masterson. Ones that would end you. Did you forget I was there? You were on speakerphone the night you called Danny on February 21st, 2001, which is the night of Ashley Ellerin's murder. I heard everything.
She heard the plan, she was there, and she went public anyway.
I went, oh, okay. Now I understand what we're up against.
But here's what nobody is connecting. Brittany Murphy didn't just die. She was taken. She was used. And the man at the center of it all spent the next decade smiling on your television screen.
Epstein Island isn't the only...
What you just heard in those 60 seconds is the architecture of the biggest story nobody in mainstream media will touch. And today, we're going to connect every single piece. Jim Caviezel is not a man who speaks carelessly. He's an actor who watched his career systematically dismantled because he refused to stay quiet. Blacklisted, mocked, written off, and yet he keeps talking. He keeps naming names. He keeps pointing at things that very powerful people have spent decades trying to bury. And recently, Jim Caviezel broke down, genuinely, visibly broke down, while discussing what he believes happened to a young actress named Brittany Murphy. Not just her death, not just the official story about pneumonia and natural causes. What allegedly happened to her before she died, on an island, inside a network, at the hands of people who have never faced a single consequence. To understand what Caviezel is revealing, you first have to understand the architecture. Because this story doesn't start with Brittany Murphy's death. It starts with how she got pulled into the orbit of the man who allegedly put her there. A man named Ashton Kutcher, born Christopher Ashton Kutcher in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. No connections, no industry access. Just a good-looking kid who got discovered at a bar in the late 1990s and walked straight into the modeling world.
If you look in the top right hand corner of that photo of my abs that look phenomenal, I don't know what happened to those, you'll see a guy in the background. If you really look close, you might see Superman, because that is Tom Welling. And that is when I met Tom Welling for the first time.
But here's what matters. That modeling work wasn't just for any brand. Abercrombie and Fitch. And Abercrombie and Fitch wasn't owned by some random fashion executive. It was owned by Les Wexner, the billionaire behind Victoria's Secret, Bath & Body Works, the same Les Wexner who handed Jeffrey Epstein power of attorney over his entire financial empire, who gave Epstein the $77 million Manhattan mansion that became the launchpad for Epstein's criminal network. The FBI later named Wexner as Epstein's co-conspirator, and Ashton Kutcher was the face of his brand. Now, is that a crime? No. Does that make Ashton Kutcher guilty of anything on its own? Not necessarily. But here's what it is. It's a door. And in Hollywood, the doors you walk through determine the rooms you end up in. The next room Kutcher walked into was That 70s Show, 1998, instant success. Inside that world, he built the two relationships that would define everything that came after. One was with Mila Kunis, who he eventually married. The other was with Danny Masterson. Danny Masterson, a man Kutcher called a role model, a man he described as an exceptional older brother figure, a man he would later write a personal letter for, submitted directly to the judge who had just listened to the testimony of women Masterson had violated, women who spent years being disbelieved, women who sat in that very courtroom. And Kutcher asked that judge to go easy on him.
A couple months ago, Danny's family reached out to us and they asked us to write character letters to represent the person that we knew for 25 years. So that the judge could take that into full consideration relative to the sentencing.
The letters were not written to question the legitimacy of the judicial system or the validity of the jury's ruling.
They were intended for the judge to read.
Sorry, they were sorry. But here's what that apology never explained. It never explained why, after years of public accusations against Masterson, accusations that were common knowledge inside Hollywood long before any courtroom, Kutcher still considered him a role model. It never explained what he knew and when he knew it. And it never explained how a man who testified before Congress about protecting children from exploitation used that same credibility to shield a convicted predator from consequences. When the letter became public, the reaction was immediate. Victims spoke out. The internet erupted, and one of Masterson's accusers, a woman known as Jane Doe 1, had words. This video was incredibly insulting and hurtful. And another accuser, Chrissy Bixler, was even more direct. In my opinion, you're just as sick as your mentor. Mentor. She used that word deliberately. But before we even get to Brittany Murphy, before we get to Epstein Island, before we get to what Jim Caviezel broke down revealing, you need to sit with February 21st, 2001. That night, Ashton Kutcher had plans. A date with with a young woman named Ashley Ellerin. He testified that he arrived at her apartment, knocked, got no answer, saw what he thought was red wine on the carpet through the window, and left. What he saw through that window wasn't red wine. Ashley Ellerin was stabbed 47 times inside that apartment. But here's what's crucial. Here's what Jim Caviezel brought into the light. According to Chrissy Bixler, who was in the car that night with Danny Masterson, Ashton didn't call the police when he found what he thought was a dead body.
Ashton was on speakerphone. When he called Danny Masterson, after having already spent an hour on the phone with Ashton, after Ashton had already spent an hour on the phone with his own manager, trying to decide whether he should call the police about having just found the dead body of the girl he was about to go out on a date.
Let that sink in. He found the body. His first call was to his manager. His second call was to Danny Masterson, the man later convicted of rape, the man Kutcher called a role model, not 911, not the police, his image manager and his role model. And Chrissy Bixler didn't mince words about what that means.
You were on speakerphone the night you called Danny on February 21st, 2001, which is the night of Ashley Ellerin's murder.
You gotta be kidding.
I heard everything.
She heard the plan. Jim Caviezel has said directly that Ashton Kutcher's statements to the police and his statements on the stand were lies. That is not a rumor pulled from an internet forum. That is a named public individual making a specific allegation about a specific night. So before we even get to Brittany Murphy, before we get to Epstein's Island, before we get to what broke Jim Caviezel down on camera, you already have this. A man whose fingerprints were at a murder scene, who called everyone except the police, who later wrote a character letter for a convicted predator, who was friends with Les Wexner, who empowered Jeffrey Epstein, who partied with Diddy. This is not a coincidence. This is a pattern. And speaking of Diddy, let's talk about the Diddy connection, because it's crucial to understanding the network. Ashton Kutcher and Sean Combs were not casual acquaintances. They were photographed together repeatedly across 2 decades. Kutcher attended his events. He moved in his circles. He existed comfortably inside the world Diddy was building, the same world that federal investigators have since dismantled piece by piece. Since Diddy's arrest, every name connected to him has been examined with scrutiny Hollywood has never faced before. Who knew about the parties? Who attended? Who said nothing? When Kutcher was asked directly about his relationship with Diddy, his response was telling.
These stories, they're our favorite genre of anecdote. If you
really?
have one, yeah. Wow. Okay, I've got a lot I can't tell. So, can't tell that one either. I mean, like actually cycling through.
He can't tell. He's cycling through them. And he said it with a smile as if it were an amusing anecdote rather than a confession wrapped in a punchline. As it stands, Kutcher has never addressed the Diddy connection publicly. Not once. Not even a statement. And for a man who built his brand on transparency and advocacy, that silence is deafening. Now, Jim Caviezel has talked about what he calls the machinery behind Hollywood's elite network. And he's been explicit. Epstein Island was not the only island. There were others, other locations, other properties, other places where powerful men brought women, some willingly, some not, and where things happened that were recorded, cataloged, and used as leverage for decades.
Epstein Island isn't the only.
7 words. He said it knowing exactly what they meant, knowing exactly what the response would be. Because if Epstein Island wasn't the only one, then the question becomes, where were the others and who was being brought there? An Epstein survivor whose account has been circulating in the spaces tracking the Epstein document releases has alleged that Ashton Kutcher played a direct role in the network, not as a peripheral friend of the powerful, not as someone who just happened to be photographed with the wrong people, but as someone actively involved in luring young women, someone who used his access, his charm, his untouchable public image as tools. A young actress receiving attention from Ashton Kutcher would not feel alarmed. She would feel flattered, she would feel chosen, and by the time she understood what world she had walked into, the cameras were already rolling. Brittany Murphy was 32 years old when she passed away. At her peak, she was one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces. Clueless, 8 Mile, Just Married, the film she made opposite the man she was dating at the time, Ashton Kutcher. They moved in the same circles. They shared the same industry. And then, quietly, the relationship ended. And everything that happened after followed a pattern that nobody in Hollywood seemed to want to discuss.
I absolutely do.
Something made her sick. A healthy 32-year-old doesn't.
Her roles dried up. The industry that had embraced her began to quietly close its doors. There were always whispers about why. Because she was, by every professional account, an extraordinarily talented actress, magnetic, the kind of person who made every scene better. And yet, the work stopped coming. Then came December 2009. She collapsed in her bathroom.
I think they knew that she was sick because she'd had this terrible laryngitis. And there was a period at about 3 o'clock in the morning, She was gasping for breath, and she actually said, I think I'm going to...
She knew. Whatever was happening to her body, she felt it coming. The official cause of death: pneumonia, iron deficiency, anemia, multiple drug intoxication, and natural causes. Her husband, Simon Monjack, sat with her body for hours before calling anyone. He grieved publicly, gave interviews, mourned on camera, and then, 6 months later, almost to the exact week, he died in the same house. Same cause of death: pneumonia. 2 people, same house, same cause, 5 months apart. Brittany's father, Angelo Bertolotti, never accepted the official explanation. He commissioned independent toxicology testing on hair samples from his daughter. The results, he claimed, showed levels of heavy metals, including compounds consistent with rat poison, completely inconsistent with natural illness.
Oh, it's very suspicious, and I read the reports on the toxicology reports, and everything sounds very, very, very more or less suspicious.
He pointed at Hollywood. He pointed at powerful people who had wanted his daughter silenced. And among the names that appeared in online discussions, in forums, in the spaces where official narratives get torn apart, was the name of her famous ex. No charges were ever filed. No official investigation was ever opened. Bertolotti kept talking until his own death, and the questions he raised have never been fully answered. But now, for the first time, Jim Caviezel is connecting dots that nobody in the mainstream media has been willing to connect. Because Brittany Murphy's death, as suspicious as it is, as many unanswered questions as it carries, is not the full story. What Jim Caviezel is alleging goes further back. Before the collapsed bathroom, before the dried-up career, before the mystery pneumonia, Caviezel has been explicit about what he believes happened. Brittany Murphy was taken to a place. She was used, she was filmed. And when the possibility arose that she might talk about what she'd witnessed or experienced, the machinery moved. Think about the timeline. Brittany and Ashton's relationship ends. Her career begins to collapse. The industry that had given her everything begins closing doors. In the years that follow, according to those close to her, she begins to unravel in ways that don't fit the public narrative. And then she's gone. Here's what we know. Jeffrey Epstein's victims have stated clearly that they believed they were being filmed. Spy cameras, recording equipment, embedded inside Epstein's properties.
Epstein's victims have long said they believe they were being filmed by the ex-offender. And this footage from a spy cam style camera inside Epstein's Palm Beach house appears to show.
This wasn't just about abuse, it was about blackmail. Footage that could be used to control people, to buy silence, to destroy anyone who stepped out of line. If that footage existed, and investigators believe it did, then the question becomes not just who was on it, but who was being protected by it. Who in Hollywood was being kept in line because somewhere on a hard drive, on a server, in a vault, there was evidence of something they couldn't explain away. And if Brittany Murphy saw something, if she knew something, if she was in a position to talk about what happened inside that world, then her silencing stops being a mystery and starts being a motive. This is where Jim Caviezel broke down, a man who has kept his composure through years of being mocked and dismissed, who has faced career destruction without flinching. He broke down because when you start connecting these pieces, the picture that forms is not abstract. It's specific, it has names, it has dates, it has a young woman who told her family she thought she was going to die and then did.
Oh, okay. Now I understand what we're up against.
That moment, that specific moment when Caviezel says those words and his composure begins to fracture. That is a man who has connected all of this. Who has held the full picture in his mind? Who understands the scale of what he is alleging and what it means and what it costs to say it out loud? He's not talking about industry gossip. He's not talking about character flaws. He's talking about a system, deliberate, organized, protected from the top. A system that consumed young women and discarded them. And Brittany Murphy, he believes, was one of them. Now, here's the piece of this story that makes it impossible to look away. 3 deaths, 3 women or people connected to women with ties to the same overlapping world of Hollywood power. 3 causes of death listed as pneumonia, and 1 coroner's office overseeing all of them. Brittany Murphy, December 2009, pneumonia. Simon Monjack, May 2010, pneumonia. Kim Porter, November 2018, pneumonia. Kim Porter was the mother of Diddy's children. People close to her say she was preparing to speak publicly about what she had witnessed inside his world, the parties, the network, the things that happen when powerful men believe no one is watching. She was reportedly working on a memoir. She died before it was published. The memoir, if it existed in complete form, has never surfaced. And Sean Combs, the man federal prosecutors now allege ran a decade-long criminal enterprise built on coercion and abuse, has never been asked publicly about the timing of her death. death, not once. All 3 deaths were handled at various points by the Los Angeles coroner's office under the oversight of the same official, a man named Ed Winter. Ed Winter died in March 2023. Now, correlation is not causation. That matters. That needs to be said. 3 pneumonia deaths across a decade are not on their own evidence of a conspiracy. The same coroner handling high-profile Los Angeles deaths is not unusual. That's how coroners' offices function. But sit with this for a moment. Kim Porter was preparing to talk. Brittany Murphy's father believed his daughter was poisoned and spent years trying to prove it. And every official channel that could have answered his questions stayed closed. In a functioning system with real accountability, those questions would have been answered 15 years ago. Instead, we are still asking them. You cannot understand what happened to Brittany Murphy without understanding the structure around her. Ashton Kutcher, Diddy, Les Wexner, Harvey Weinstein, Danny Masterson, Jeffrey Epstein. These are not random names pulled from different corners of Hollywood. These men inhabited the same world. They attended the same events. They protected each other. When one of them needed something kept quiet, the machinery kicked in. Publicists, lawyers, fixers, character letters, coroner reports, official rulings that closed cases before the real questions could be asked. Kutcher built an entire public identity on speaking up. His anti-trafficking organization was his crowning achievement, the thing he pointed to when anyone questioned his character. The thing that inoculated him against scrutiny for years. And yet he was friends with Les Wexner, who empowered Jeffrey Epstein. He partied with Diddy, who is now facing federal charges. He wrote letters for Danny Masterson, who is now serving 30 years. He was photographed with Harvey Weinstein, convicted. That's silence. That's strategic, calculated silence about all of it. That's the right phrase for it, because silence is loud. Now, a question people keep asking is simple. If all of this is true, even partially, why haven't prosecutions been initiated? The answer is in the architecture itself. In this world, those involved in the Epstein class will never get arrested. They are the untouchables. Look at all the cover-ups by authorities at all levels who look the other way. The machinery doesn't just move to silence victims, it moves to protect perpetrators. Coroners rule natural causes, judges accept character letters, publicists spin narratives, and the men at the center of it all keep smiling on television, until they don't. The Epstein files are still being unsealed. The Combs case is still expanding. Hollywood's wall of silence, a wall that held for decades, is cracking. And behind it are names, dates, footage, documentation. Brittany Murphy's father went to his grave insisting his daughter was murdered. He had hair samples tested, he found heavy metals, he pointed at Hollywood, he was dismissed, marginalized, and ignored by every official channel that was supposed to care. But here's the thing about fathers who don't stop asking questions. Eventually, someone starts listening. And Jim Caviezel is listening. He's connecting the pieces. He's saying the things nobody else in Hollywood will say. He's breaking down not because he's weak, but because he's finally seeing the full picture and understanding what it means.
Puff and I blow the dust.
That's not just a phrase. That's a promise. The walls are coming down. Ashton Kutcher built a career on 3 things: likability, access, and reinvention. Every time the old version of Ashton stopped working, the prankster, the actor, the tech bro, the activist, a new version appeared, polished, reframed, ready for the next chapter. And the world applauded every single iteration because he was good at it. He was very, very good at it. But here's what no reinvention can outrun. He wrote a character letter for a convicted rapist and called him a role model. He was found at the scene, fingerprints confirmed, on the night a woman he was supposed to be with was murdered, and his first calls were to his manager and Danny Masterson. He partied with Diddy for 2 decades and has never said a single word about it publicly. He modeled for a brand owned by the man who handed Jeffrey Epstein his empire. He built an organization fighting child trafficking while maintaining friendships with men now convicted or charged with the very crimes he claimed to be fighting. And 2 women connected to him. 2 women who were part of his world, died under circumstances that their loved ones and now a named public whistleblower refused to accept as natural.
I absolutely do.
Something made her sick. A healthy 32-year-old doesn't just...
The gap between who Ashton Kutcher told the world he was and who the evidence, documented, sourced, on record, suggests he actually is not small. It has never been small. It was just very carefully managed. We don't know everything. We may never know everything. The official record is closed. The coroner is dead. The people who could have answered these questions chose not to. But here is what we do know. An Epstein survivor has named Ashton Kutcher as part of the network. Jim Caviezel has publicly said Ashton Kutcher is not the man he pretended to be. Chrissy Bixler has said she was on the phone call on the night of Ashley Ellerin's murder. 3 people connected to the same overlapping Hollywood circle died of the same cause. And one of them, Kim Porter, was about to talk. The Epstein files are still unsealing, the Combs case is still expanding, and somewhere in a vault, on a server, in a sealed document, the answers to the questions Brittany Murphy's father died asking are waiting. Was she taken to an island? Was she filmed? Was she silenced when the possibility of her speaking became real? We are asking. Jim Caviezel is asking. And now so are you. The machine doesn't like questions. It never did, but it's running out of places to hide. Stay locked in because this story isn't over.